I still remember the smell of those white lilies. They filled every corner of St. Helena Church that afternoon. The same church where I was supposed to watch the love of my life become someone else's husband. But here's the twist. I wasn't the bride. I was the best man. My name's Luis Morales. And that day was supposed to be one of celebration. My childhood friend, Carmen Vega, was about to get engaged in a very modern twist. To her boyfriend, me at least. That's what I thought. See, Carmen had planned this reverse proposal, you know, where the bride surprises the groom during the ceremony. She told everyone it was symbolic, romantic, a statement of equality in love. We'd been together for 5 years. I thought it was our moment. But when the music stopped and all eyes turned toward me, the world shifted. Carmen stood in front of 300 people, radiant in her silver gown, hair slicked into a perfect bun. She smiled. Only it wasn't that soft smile I'd known since we were teenagers. It was sharp, almost cruel. "Luis," she said, holding the microphone, "you've been good to me, but I can't go through with this." The room froze. My body went cold. "I can't propose to you," she continued. "I can't marry someone who doesn't take care of himself. Look at you. You're obese. You're lazy. You're holding me back." Every word landed like a knife. The crowd gasped. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. My own mother, sitting in the second row, buried her face in her hands. I wanted to disappear. The camera flashes stopped. The silence was suffocating. I felt the sweat beneath my collar, the heat creeping up my neck. I'd lost 70 pounds that year already. I'd been trying, but to her, none of it mattered. "Carmen, please. Can we talk privately?" I whispered, but the microphone caught it. Echoing through the church, she shook her head. "There's nothing to talk about, Luis. I deserve better. I need a man who looks like he belongs next to me." She placed the ring box on the altar, turned her back, and walked down the aisle, leaving me standing there like a ghost in an ill-fitting suit. For a long second, nobody moved. Then came the murmurs, the pitying looks, the whispers I'd spent my whole life trying to outrun. "Poor guy." She finally said what we were all thinking. "He should have seen it coming." I couldn't breathe. The world tilted sideways. My knees wobbled. I tried to steady myself against the railing of the altar, but the bouquet, Carmen's bouquet, fell from my hands and scattered white lilies across the marble floor. That's when a voice rang out from the back of the church. "Hey there, my wonderful family and friends. Welcome back. If you're ready to dive into today's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. I love seeing where everyone's watching. And guess what? There's another amazing story coming your way tomorrow. One you definitely don't want to miss. Alright then, let's get started. I'll marry him." Every head turned. There, standing in the last pew, was a tall woman in a dark blue pantsuit. Her posture was elegant, her expression calm but intense. I'd never seen her before in my life. The whispers started again. Sharper this time, she stepped forward, her heels echoing down the aisle like the countdown to something impossible. "Excuse me?" stammered Father Diaz, the priest, blinking in disbelief. "My name's Isabella Cruz," she said, "CEO of Cruz and Partners. I've been sitting here watching this humiliation for 10 minutes. It's enough." She reached the altar, stopping just a few feet from me. Her eyes softened when she looked at me. "No one deserves to be treated like that," she said quietly. "Not in front of their family. Not by someone who claims to love them." I stared at her, my mouth half open. "You don't even know me." "I know what I saw," she said. "And I know what it feels like to be humiliated for how you look or where you come from. I'm not offering charity, Luis. I'm offering dignity." The room buzzed. Carmen's father stood up, furious. "This is insane. Who even are you?" "I'm a woman who believes in action," Isabella said. Then she turned back to me. "Luis, if you'll have me, I'll marry you. Right here. Right now." The priest sputtered. "Siora, that's highly irregular, but not illegal, right?" She countered smoothly. He hesitated. "Technically, if both parties consent and there are witnesses, then let's proceed." The church broke into chaos. Shocked voices. Camera phones rising again. People gasping. But all I could see was her. This stranger with calm eyes and a voice steady enough to drown out my shame. Was this a joke? A publicity stunt? Some cruel twist of fate? I looked down at my hands, shaking so hard I could barely clasp them together. Why? I asked her. Why would you do this? Because it's the right thing to do, she said simply. And because I don't want to leave this place knowing no one stood up for you. My throat closed. No one had ever stood up for me like that. Not even me. I don't know what came over me then. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the part of me that refused to walk out of that church as the man everyone pitied. I said the two words that would change everything. All right. I will. The priest blinked, then nodded slowly. If that's your wish then, let's proceed. The ceremony was short and surreal. The words blurred together. Do you take this man? Do you take this woman? When the priest finally said, you may kiss, Isabella didn't hesitate. She leaned in and pressed a respectful kiss to my cheek. The crowd erupted, not in applause, but in stunned silence. We walked out together, hand in hand. Under the blinding sunlight, her grip was firm, reassuring outside. A sleek black car waited at the curb. A driver opened the door for her. She looked at me and said, let's get out of here. We'll talk somewhere private. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. Anything was better than standing there with the sound of Carmen's rejection echoing in my head. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window and saw Carmen on the church steps. Her face pale, her mouth slightly open for once. She looked like the one who'd been left behind. Before we continue, I have to ask you something. Have you ever been publicly humiliated? Ever had someone you trusted tear you apart in front of others? What did you do in that moment? Fight back? Or freeze like I did? Tell me in the comments below. I read everyone, because this story, this crazy, impossible story, is just getting started. The next morning, I woke up in the softest bed I'd ever felt. For a second, I thought it was all a dream. The church, Carmen, the humiliation, the stranger who said I will. But then I saw the gold band on my finger. Reality hit like cold water. I was married to a woman I didn't know. I sat up fast, heart racing, looking around the massive suite. Everything gleamed, white walls, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. A half-empty champagne glass sat on the nightstand next to my phone, which had exploded overnight with missed calls and messages. The first one was from my mom, the second from Carmen. I didn't have the courage to listen to either. Then came a knock at the door. Luis. Her voice was calm, low, controlled. It's Isabella. May I come in? I panicked for a second. I was still in yesterday's suit, wrinkled and stained with tears and sweat. Give me 5 minutes. I rushed into the bathroom, splashing water on my face, staring at my reflection, puffy eyes. A man who looked like he'd been hit by a truck driven by heartbreak itself. When I finally opened the door, Isabella stood there. No blue suit this time. Just jeans and a cream sweater, her dark hair pulled back. She carried 2 cups of coffee and a bag that smelled like warm bread and cinnamon. Good morning, she said, offering 1 cup. You look like you didn't sleep. Because I didn't, I muttered. Taking the coffee, I figured, she said with a small smile. Settling into a chair by the window. We should probably talk about what happened yesterday. I sat across from her, gripping the cup like a lifeline. You think? Isabella took a sip before answering. I didn't plan to crash your wedding. If that's what you're wondering, then why did you? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. No offense, but people don't just marry strangers because they feel bad for them. Her eyes softened. I didn't do it out of pity, Louise. I did it because I saw a man who was being destroyed for something that didn't define him. You were humiliated for your size, for your worth, in front of people who should have protected you. And I couldn't sit there and do nothing. I didn't know what to say. Her voice wasn't full of sympathy. It was conviction. Like she'd made a decision she'd make again if she had to. She set her cup down. My little brother, Mateo, went through something similar. He struggled with his weight his whole life. The world treated him cruelly. He passed away 4 years ago. Heart failure at 28. The air left my chest. I'm sorry. Thank you, she said softly. I promised myself that if I ever saw someone being treated the way he was, I'd step in. Maybe yesterday, I was trying to keep that promise. We sat there in silence for a moment. Just the rain and the hum of the city below us. Then she said, Luis, I'm not expecting anything from you. No romance, no gratitude. Think of this marriage as a door opening. You don't owe me anything, but I have resources, connections, opportunities, if you want to start fresh somewhere new. Somewhere people don't whisper when you walk by. I can help. I frowned. You're serious? You don't even know me. I know what I saw, she said. A man who handled public humiliation with dignity. You didn't yell. You didn't curse. You stood there and took it like someone twice your size and spirit. Her words burned and healed at the same time. I stared down at my cup. What's in it for you, Isabella? Why help me? She smiled sadly. Peace. Maybe. The kind I didn't get with my brother. I didn't have an answer. I didn't even know what I wanted. All I knew was that the idea of staying in town, facing Carmen, the gossip, the pity, that felt impossible. Okay, I said finally. Let's say I go with you. What does that even look like? You come to the city with me. I'll set you up with an apartment near my company. You'll have a chance to work, learn, rebuild. You can even annul the marriage later if you want. No strings attached. I blinked at her. That's insane. She shrugged lightly. Maybe. But sometimes the craziest decisions are the ones that save us. Something about her calmness, her utter confidence, made me believe her. I thought of my mother, probably crying at home, of Carmen, already rewriting the story to make herself the victim. Of all the years I'd felt too small for the world. Maybe this was my moment to be bigger. I nodded slowly. All right. I'll do it. I'll go. Her face softened into something that looked like genuine warmth. Good. But first, you should see your family. Tell your mother what's happening. An hour later, we were parked outside my mom's little house on Magnolia Avenue. The same porch I'd grown up on, the same chipped paint. Isabella waited in the car while I went inside. Luis? My mom, Mara Morales, stood in the doorway, eyes red and puffy. She pulled me into a hug so tight it hurt. Adios, M.O. I was so worried. Everyone's talking about what happened. I know. Ma, I said quietly. It's over. Her eyes darted to the ring on my hand. Luis, what is that? I took a deep breath. I got married. What? To who? Her name's Isabella Cruz. She's outside. Mari blinked, stunned. Luis, Mijo, are you sure you're okay? Did she force you? No. It was my choice. She stared at me for a long time, then sighed, shaking her head. You always had a soft heart. Just promise me you're thinking clearly. I am. I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. She's giving me a chance to start over. My mom's expression softened. She reached for the silver cross around her neck, unclasped it, and pressed it into my palm. Then take this, for protection, and call me every day. Entiendes? I will. When I walked back to the car, Isabella was waiting with her phone on her lap. She looked up and smiled. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, clutching the cross in my fist. Let's go. 3 hours later, the world outside my window had transformed. Steel and glass towers, flashing lights, people moving fast. When we pulled up to her building, a gleaming high-rise downtown, I realized how far from my old life I'd just stepped. The doorman greeted her by name. Good evening, Ms. Cruz. Good evening, Raphael, she replied, then, turning to me, welcome home, Luis. She showed me to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment back home. You can stay here as long as you need, she said. We'll get you settled tomorrow. I stood in the doorway, speechless. You didn't have to do all this. Yes, I did, she said gently, because sometimes, when life rips everything away from you, you deserve at least one person who says, you still matter. She left me alone then. Closing the door softly behind her, I sat on the edge of the bed. staring at the city lights outside the window. I was still the same man Carmen had rejected. But something in me had shifted. Maybe Isabella was right. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the first time I finally got to write my own. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a stranger show up in your life at the exact moment you needed help? Someone who didn't know you a thing, but changed everything anyway? If you have, tell me in the comments, because next, things are about to get a lot more complicated. 3 months. That's how long it had been since the wedding that never was. Long enough for the gossip in my hometown to quiet down. Long enough for me to start believing that maybe, just maybe, I was finally free. But the past, well, it doesn't ask permission. It just shows up. That morning started like any other. Coffee, emails, Clara waving from across the office. I was reviewing notes for an upcoming volunteer drive when the receptionist called. Luis, there's someone in the lobby asking for you. Says her name's Carmen Vega. My heart stopped. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. Then the blood rushed to my ears. That old, panicky ringing that used to come right before a bullying punch landed. Sent her away, I said automatically. She's insisting. I closed my laptop. Fine. I'll come down. She was there. Carmen Vega. Perfect hair. Designer coat. The same perfume that used to linger on my pillow. She smiled when she saw me, but it was a brittle, nervous thing. Luis, she said softly, you look different. So do you, I said, though it wasn't true. She still looked like the woman who'd shattered me. I came to apologize. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Here, in my workplace? I didn't know where else to find you. Everyone in town's been talking about how you married that CEO. She hesitated, biting her lip. I made a mistake, Luis. I panicked. I let people get in my head. Can we talk? Maybe dinner? I stared at her, remembering every word she'd said in that church. You're obese. You're lazy. You're holding me back. I took a slow breath. Carmen, I wish you well, truly. But I'm not interested in rewriting what already ended. Her smile faltered. You're really throwing away 5 years? For some woman you barely know? I shook my head. I'm not throwing away anything. You did that when you walked out on me. Her expression hardened. You'll regret this. No one will love you like I did. And for the first time in my life. I smiled back. Calm, steady. No, Carmen. You're right. No one will. I turned and walked away before she could see my hands shaking. That night, I told Isabella everything. We were sitting at the kitchen counter, the city humming quietly outside the windows. She listened without interrupting, then said simply, I'm proud of you, proud. I felt like I was going to pass out. But you didn't. She said, you stood up for yourself. That's growth, Luis. That's strength. Her words settled somewhere deep in my chest. Warm, steady, real. A few days later, the storm hit. Carmen went to a local blog and sold them her version of the story. Small town bride humiliated by fiancé who married rich CEO for money. By noon, the article had been shared hundreds of times. My phone blew up with texts. Is this true? Gold digger much? I wanted to crawl out of my skin. The old shame came flooding back. Clara found me staring at the article, frozen. Hey, she said gently, don't read the comments. You'll never win with strangers who only know headlines. Still, it hurt. Every lie was a bruise I couldn't explain. That evening Isabella called me into her office. We'll handle this, she said. My lawyer's already contacted the site for a retraction, Isabella. People think I used you. Let them think whatever they want, she said firmly. The truth doesn't need their approval, but I saw it in her eyes. The worry. Not for her reputation. For me, the next morning, the lawyer, Carla Mendez, came in sharp suit, sharp her voice. We can sue, she said, or we can take control of the narrative. A short interview. You tell your side. One and done. The thought of cameras made my stomach twist. Isabella reached across the table, her hand covering mine. I'll be beside you the whole time. Something about that touch steadied me. All right, I said. Let's do it. The reporter asked gentle questions. What really happened at the church? Why did Isabella step in? Was this marriage real? I told the truth. About the humiliation, about Isabella's kindness, about the work I was doing now. When she asked, "Are you in love with your wife?" I smiled and said, "I'm learning what love actually looks like. And it starts with respect." When the interview aired, everything changed. Thousands of comments poured in. People saying, "I've been there. You're brave. You made me cry." The shame that used to drown me turned into something else. A bridge. Isabella found me later that night on the balcony, scrolling through the messages with tears in my eyes. "You changed the story," she said. "No," I whispered. "You did. You gave me a voice." She shook her head. "I just handed you the microphone. You did the rest." Days passed. The noise online faded, replaced by quiet gratitude from strangers who saw themselves in my story. But something in me had shifted again. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to life. I was choosing it. I woke up earlier, walked to work instead of taking the car, started cooking healthy meals. Not to prove anything to Carmen or the world, just because I wanted to feel good in my own skin every night. I'd jot a note in that same little notebook. Day 67. Didn't flinch when I saw my reflection. Day 70. Laughed again. Really laughed. Day 75. Felt proud. No reason needed. One evening, after a long day, Isabella stopped by my desk. "Walk with me?" she asked. We took the elevator to the roof terrace, the city stretching out beneath us in gold and silver lights. She looked at me for a long moment, the breeze catching her hair. "You know what I realized watching you these past months?" "What?" "You don't need saving, Louise. You never did. You just needed a space where you could remember who you were." I smiled. "And you? What did you need?" Her eyes softened. "Maybe I needed to remember that helping people doesn't mean fixing them. Sometimes it just means believing in them." We stood there quietly, two souls who'd found healing in the strangest way possible. Not through romance, not through fairy tale rescues, through honesty, and in that stillness, I felt something new. Peace. Before we go to the next part of this story, I want to ask you something. When someone from your past tries to pull you back into old pain, how do you protect your peace? Do you fight? Forgive? Walk away? Because sometimes strength isn't loud, sometimes it's just choosing not to go backwards. 6 months after the day everything fell apart, I finally felt whole. Work was steady. My name had stopped trending. I'd even started mentoring new hires in the outreach department. Life was quiet. The good kind of quiet. Then the phone rang. It was a Tuesday morning. Isabella's voice sounded tight. "Can you come to my office?" Now, when I stepped in, the energy was different. The blinds were drawn. 3 people in suits sat at the table, our lawyers, Carla among them. Isabella looked pale. "What's going on?" I asked. Carla closed her laptop. "A rival firm just filed fraud charges against Cruz and partners. They're claiming donations were misused, that the outreach department created fake programs to inflate impact numbers." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible, every cent is documented." "I know," Isabella said, "but they've convinced investigators to open an inquiry. It's going public within hours." The room blurred. "Fraud. My department. My reports. They're naming you, Louise," Carla added quietly, "saying your position was fabricated to funnel funds." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What? That's insane." "I know it is," Isabella said firmly. "But we need to prepare for the storm." By noon, news vans lined the street. "CEO's new husband linked to charity scandal." That was the headline. Cameras, microphones, accusations, all of it felt like the church again. Only this time the whole world was watching. I wanted to run, but Isabella wouldn't let me. "You told the truth then," she said, gripping my shoulders. "You'll tell it now." The next few weeks were chaos. Auditors combed through files. Investigators interviewed employees. Partners distanced themselves. Isabella barely slept. I could see it in her eyes. That mix of fury and fear reserved for people whose integrity means everything. One night, I found her alone in her office, Head in her hands, the city glowed beyond the window like it didn't care. You should go home, I said softly. I can't, she whispered. If this company falls, every program we've built collapses with it, then let me help. She looked up. Haven't you had enough of public trials, Luis? I'm not hiding again. We'll prove the truth. Together, Clara and I gathered everything. Receipts, correspondence, contracts, testimonials from every organization we'd supported. We worked until dawn for days. One by one, community partners sent letters of support, food banks, youth programs, clinics, all confirming the donations were real, the results measurable. We compiled it all into a binder thicker than a phone book. When I dropped it on Carla's desk, she smiled for the first time in days. This, she said, is going to save us. But the investigation dragged on. Rumors spread faster than the truth. Some nights I lay awake listening to the city hum outside the window, wondering if we'd survive it. Then one evening, Isabella knocked on my door. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, blazer hanging loose. Come to the balcony, she said. We stood there in silence for a while, wind carrying the smell of rain. Finally she spoke. I built this company after Matteo died, she said quietly. It was how I made sense of losing him, by helping others. If this ends, I don't know who I am without it. I turned to her. You're the same person you were before the title, Isabella. You're the woman who stood up for a stranger in a church. That's who you are. She laughed softly, shaky. You always know what to say. No, I said. I just finally learned to say what matters. 2 weeks later, the tide began to turn. Employees started posting online photos of real projects, testimonies, proof. Then the community organizations held a press conference. I stood beside them, microphones flashing, sweat dripping down my back. A woman from a local shelter spoke first. Cruz and partners didn't defraud anyone. They changed lives, mine included. Others followed. Their words were louder than any rumor. When the investigation finally closed, the verdict came in. No evidence of wrongdoing. The competitor was fined for filing false claims. The moment Carla read the statement aloud, the room erupted. People hugged, cried, clapped. Clara threw her arms around me. You did it. I shook my head. We did. Isabella walked in then, holding the official document. For a second, she just looked at me, like she couldn't find the words. Then she crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. You saved me, she whispered. No, I said, smiling into her shoulder. You saved us. I just refused to quit. That night we sat on the balcony again. The city washed clean by rain. She handed me a glass of wine. You know, she said, when I met you, I thought I was rescuing you. Turns out, you were the one who reminded me what this work is really about. And what's that? I asked. People, she said simply, the ones worth believing in. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was safe, familiar, a kind of peace I hadn't known existed. In life, storms don't warn you before they hit. They just arrive, and you find out who you are when everything shakes. I learned I wasn't fragile. I learned that dignity isn't given. It's practiced, over and over, even when you're scared. That crisis didn't just clear my name. It cleared something deeper. The part of me that still believed I didn't deserve good things. Let me ask you something before we move on. When your world starts falling apart, who do you become? Do you crumble? Or do you fight? And when the storm finally ends, what pieces of yourself do you choose to rebuild first? Because sometimes the hardest battles aren't about proving others wrong, they're about proving yourself right. I woke up to sunlight instead of gossip. That alone felt like a small miracle. For a moment, I didn't recognize the view. Streets lined with palm trees, honking cars, skyscrapers catching the morning glow. This was the city, her city, and somehow, it was now my home. I showered, shaved, and put on the only clean shirt I had left from before the wedding. It was wrinkled and tight, but it would do. When I walked out into the kitchen, Isabella was already there, hair tied back, typing on a sleek laptop. A pot of coffee between us. Good morning, she said, not looking up. I ordered breakfast. Hope you like pancakes. I sat across from her. awkward, unsure how to exist in this quiet luxury. Thanks, I said. You don't have to do all this. She smiled faintly. I know, but I want you to have one normal morning. After that, we work. Work? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, you're not just going to sit here, Luis. You said you wanted a fresh start, so I'm giving you one. You'll come to my company today. I nearly choked on my coffee. Your company? Isabella, I can't just... You can. She interrupted calmly. You're smart. You're intuitive, and I need people like that. You'll shadow my community outreach director. Learn how we help local families, food programs, scholarships. That's your department now. I blinked. You're serious? As a heart attack, she said, closing her laptop. You can't heal by hiding. You need purpose. Cruz and Partners wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. Back home, I'd worked odd jobs, grocery clerk, delivery driver, the occasional construction shift. This place was another planet, marble floors, glass walls. A receptionist who greeted me with a smile that felt like it came with a corporate NDA. Good morning, Mr. Morales, Ms. Cruz is expecting you. Hearing my last name after Mr. made me straighten my shoulders a little. Isabella walked me through the building, introducing me to everyone from interns to executives. People treated her like she was gravity itself, steady, powerful, commanding respect with every step. Luis, this is Clara Mendoza, she said as we reached the community outreach department. She runs our social impact programs. Clara? A woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and curls piled on top of her head, shook my hand warmly. Ah, so this is the famous mystery husband, she teased. I laughed nervously. Yeah, that's me. Don't worry, she said kindly. We don't bite here. You'll fit right in. Isabella nodded. Clara, help him get settled, Luis. I'll check in later. And just like that, she was gone. The first few days felt like being dropped into a new language without subtitles. Meetings about grant funding, reports about school partnerships, community center blueprints. It was overwhelming, but slowly, something shifted. Clara had this way of making everything human. She said, don't focus on the spreadsheets. Luis, focus on the stories. Every number is a person who needs help. That clicked by the end of the week. I was sitting in a community center in East LA, talking to kids about what they wanted to be when they grew up. One girl, maybe 10 years old, said she wanted to be a chef but didn't think big people could move fast enough in a kitchen. Her words hit hard. I smiled anyway and said, you'd be surprised what big people can do when the world stops telling them what they can't. That night, I wrote those words down in a notebook I found on the desk in my room. You'd be surprised what big people can do. It became my little mantra. 2 weeks in, I started feeling different. Not thinner. Not yet. But lighter somehow. I walked straighter. I stopped apologizing when I took up space in elevators. I started to see what Isabella meant by purpose. Work became therapy. Every family we helped reminded me that worth isn't measured in pounds or titles. It's measured in effort. Still, some nights were hard. I'd catch my reflection in the penthouse mirror. That old voice whispering, she only did this because she pities you. Then I'd remember the look in Isabella's eyes that day at the church. It wasn't pity. It was defiance. And maybe a little bit of faith. One Friday evening, Isabella invited me to dinner in the penthouse dining room. The table was set with takeout containers. Nothing fancy, just tacos and arroz con frijoles. She poured me a soda and smiled. How was your first real week? I laughed. Exhausting, but good. I like Clara. She doesn't treat me like a project. That's because you're not one, Isabella said. You're an asset. You make me sound like a stock. Then consider yourself blue chip, she said. And we both laughed. Then her tone softened. You know, Luis, I see a lot of potential in you. Not just in the job in you. I stared at her, unsure how to respond. That's not something I hear often. Then get used to it, she said simply. Because I'm going to keep saying it until you believe it. Later that night, after she went to her office, I sat on the balcony looking over the city. The air was warm, the lights endless. I thought about the man I'd been 3 weeks ago. standing humiliated in a church, believing his story was over. Now, I had a job, a purpose, a woman who saw something in me when I couldn't see it myself. Maybe this was what healing looked like. Not dramatic, not instant, but quiet. One small decision at a time. Show up, try, believe. I didn't know what the future would hold between Isabella and me. But for the first time, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I could build. Before we move on, I want to ask you something. Have you ever started over when everything felt broken? What was the first small thing you did to rebuild yourself? Because sometimes that tiny first step, the one no one sees, is where the whole story really begins. A year ago today, I stood in a church wearing a suit that didn't fit, waiting for someone who decided I wasn't good enough. This morning, I woke up in a place I built with my own hands and a woman who believed I was worth everything. Funny what a year can do after the investigation cleared. Life slowed down, for once. The world wasn't watching, no headlines, no whispers, just ordinary days that felt extraordinary to me. I kept working in community outreach. Now as a coordinator, we expanded programs, opened 2 new food centers, and launched scholarships in Isabella Cruz's name. Every week, I wrote Isabella a short report. She'd read them with that little smile she did when she was proud but pretending not to be. We became friends in a way we hadn't had time for before. Real friends. We'd grab tacos after work, walk by the river on Sundays, talk about everything from childhood memories to the meaning of success. There were moments, though, tiny pauses between sentences, where her eyes lingered on mine a little too long, and my heart forgot how to act normal. One Saturday morning, she invited me to the company's annual charity gala. This time, she said, "You're not just staff. You're the reason we're still standing. I want you there beside me." I bought my first real suit, a dark navy one that actually fit, and when I walked into that ballroom, I swear I didn't recognize myself. Neither did she. She turned as I approached, wearing a simple green dress that shimmered when the light hit it. For a second, all the noise faded. Just her and me. "Wow," she said softly. "Look at you." "Right back at you," I managed, trying not to sound like a lovesick teenager. We spent the night shaking hands, thanking donors, laughing like people who'd earned the right to be happy. At one point, an older woman, an investor, I think, asked how long we'd been married. Isabella smiled and said, "Long enough to know it was the best impulsive decision I ever made." My chest tightened. For her, maybe it was a joke. For me, it felt like a confession. Later that night, after the crowd thinned out, she found me standing on the balcony overlooking the city. "You okay?" she asked. "I am," I said, smiling, just thinking about everything that's happened. She leaned on the railing beside me. "Do you ever regret it? That day? The wedding? The whole thing? Me stepping in, you saying yes?" I turned toward her. "No, not for a second. It was crazy. Sure, but it was the beginning of everything good in my life." She looked down at her hands. "You've changed so much. Louise, you're confident now. You lead people. You smile more. That's what happens when someone finally believes in you." Her voice softened. "I didn't do that." "You did. Maybe," I said quietly. "But I wouldn't have started without you." She didn't answer. She just reached for my hand, and for the first time, we didn't let go. A few weeks later, she invited me to dinner at her favorite restaurant, some hidden place with candles and live guitar music. Halfway through dessert, she slid a small box across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a silver ring, simple but beautiful. "It's not an engagement ring," she said quickly, smiling. "It's a promise ring, a symbol of how far we've come." I looked up, heart pounding. "Together." She nodded. "Together." Life found a rhythm again. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. Every shared coffee, every late-night conversation, every silent moment watching the skyline felt like another piece falling into place. 6 months later, she surprised me again. We were at a community event. Kids running around with painted faces, music blasting from a speaker out of nowhere. She stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. Luis Morales, she said, smiling down at me. You once stood in front of hundreds of people who told you you weren't enough. Today, I'm standing in front of hundreds who know you are. The crowd hushed. You taught me that love isn't about rescue. It's about respect. So this time, let me ask properly. And right there, in front of everyone, she knelt, held up a ring, and said, "Will you marry me for real this time?" My knees gave out before the words did. I laughed, cried, nodded, all at once. Yes, 1,000 times yes. We kept it small, just family, close friends, co-workers who'd become like siblings. Clara cried before the vows even started. My mom kept crossing herself, whispering, "Gracias a Dios," when the officiant asked for our vows. I went first. "Isabella," I said, "you met me on the worst day of my life. You gave me dignity when I'd lost it, and space to find who I really am. You showed me that love can start with kindness and grow into something fearless. I choose you, not because I need saving, but because with you, I'm free." Then it was her turn. "Luis," she said, voice shaking just a little. "That day in the church, I thought I was saving someone. But you're the one who saved me, from work without purpose, from walls I built around my heart. You reminded me that people are worth believing in. I choose you, again, and again, for the rest of our lives." When we kissed, the whole garden erupted in cheers. For once, I didn't feel small, I felt infinite, that night. As the party lights faded and guests drifted home, we sat together under the same stars that had watched me cry a year ago. Only now, I was laughing. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Remember when you thought your story ended at that altar?" "Yeah," I said. "Turns out, it was just a prologue. If you've made it this far, maybe you needed to hear this too. Sometimes the worst rejection isn't the end. It's the invitation to rewrite your life. Sometimes the people who walk away are just making space for the ones who will truly see you. So if you're standing in your own kind of church, heartbroken, humiliated, convinced you're done, I promise you, you're not. The story keeps going. You just have to say yes to the next chapter. Tell me in the comments, what moment in your life looked like an ending but became a beginning instead? Because maybe your next I will is still waiting for you.
Thank you for watching all the way through. If this story moved you, the next one will surprise you in ways you won't expect. Go ahead and click the video on your screen. Your next story awaits.